Hi there, this is Ilise Benun, your marketing mentor. And this is the podcast for you if and only if you are ready to leave the feast or famine syndrome behind, and I mean for good. All right, so today I'm doing something a little different. Actually, I did something different last time too in episode 510, and some people were confused, but I'll get to that. Today, I'm doing a different thing differently because I've been getting a lot of questions lately, so I'm going to do a Q&A. And I'm going to cover how to stay motivated to keep doing your marketing because, as I like to say, marketing works when you do it. And how to know if the prospects you want to work with want you, and whether or not you can have more than one LinkedIn profile, and much more. So listen and learn. So the first question is, can I have more than one LinkedIn profile? We'll start with an easy one. And the short answer is no, but I thought I would put this to ChatGPT. And here's what ChatGPT said. LinkedIn's policy technically allows only one personal profile per user. Creating multiple profiles violates their terms of service, and they may suspend or delete duplicate profiles if discovered, and we don't want that. But they do suggest a couple of workarounds if you need to manage different professional identities. One is having a LinkedIn company page, which I do agree is a good idea, but it's connected to your personal profile. And here's something I didn't know. You could have showcase pages. It says for brands or specific initiatives under a larger organization, you can create showcase pages. They're great for highlighting different projects or business divisions. Okay, something worth looking into. And then you can also include multiple positions on one profile in the part that looks kind of like the resume in your experience section. You can have different roles. And I actually have done this by highlighting different past clients. You can, instead of having a role in your experience section, you can have a client and a project you did for a client. So that's the answer to, can I have more than one LinkedIn profile? Second question is, once I find a company that looks like a good fit, how do I know if they need my services, and how do I decide if they're the right size? Well, unfortunately, you can't really know for sure until you actually make contact, like a conversation or an email exchange, but I think there are signs and you can make estimated guesses. For example, educated guesses. For example, if you are a copywriter who writes case studies, then you will want to look for companies that already have case studies on their websites or are promoting them, perhaps on LinkedIn, because obviously these companies are more likely to need more written, and you won't have to convince them of the value of case studies since they're already clearly using them and they know. In fact, actually, a content writer recently wrote to me about how she is using AI to find companies that need case study copywriters. She said, per your quick tips, if you haven't signed up for my quick tips, I hope you will at marketing-mentor.com. She gets them and she said, per your quick tips, I've been playing around with Perplexity to find prospects that publish case studies. I explained to the AI who I am, what type of companies I like working with, and what type of content they should have on their websites. And then I ask for a list of 10 organizations that may be a good fit, and it works. Excellent. Yep, that's what I am finding too. It could be as simple as that. Not always. Now, in terms of what's the right size for you and who's a good fit for you, if you're just starting out, you may not know yet, which is another reason I highly recommend using practice prospects. They can be very, very helpful. Some newbies starting out in their own business feel more comfortable starting with small companies, maybe fewer than 5 employees or maybe just 2 employees. However, if you have a history of working for large corporations, then I think that means you understand how they work and probably feel more comfortable with them. Because each company size has different needs. And certainly as you build your business, you're going to learn the pros and cons for you of each type of client. This is very subjective and personal. But that is really how you'll discover which is the best fit for you. But either way, I think of everyone and everything as practice and learning. You're just practicing on real people and learning what works best for you and for them. And soon enough, you'll know. But you got to try it. All right. Now, question number 3 is an interesting one. Someone asked, when do I know that I'm ready to launch? So I definitely am approached by and work with people who are just starting their business or think they may want to start a business sometime in the future, but aren't sure how to get ready and don't feel ready to quote unquote launch. And I did think this was an interesting question to put to my community. I'm going to share with you what the community said. And the community is the people who have my Simplest Marketing Plan and who attend the monthly office hours that I hold. I just had one on Friday. But before we get to what they said, I just want to consider the question, what does it mean to launch? And what exactly happens before and after that moment? Because my experience, and I've been doing what I do for more than 36 years, so I don't actually remember launching very well, but there wasn't a moment when I had or hadn't launched. It was more a gradual progression. And I think that is more often how it happens. And that certainly was reinforced by the response from the community. So think first about, what does it actually mean to launch? Is it having your website ready? Is it being able to just say to someone, this is what I do? Or is it something else? Being serious, taking what you do seriously. So when I asked the community, how did you know, or how do you know when you're ready to launch? Here's what they said. Never ready, just have to do it. Or just jump in imperfectly. Someone else said, it's best to try not to know and just do it. Another person said, do it before you're ready. Another person said, you're never ready. Another person said, you don't know when you're ready. One person said, when you have a client, you're launched. Another person said, when you see a gap in what you're doing and a need, and it just feels right. Someone else said, feel the fear and do it anyway. One woman said, it's like having a baby. You will never be ready. Just do as much as you can and do it. One person said, when you've got bills due, then you launch. You have to accept less than perfection. Just do it. Some person said, I think it's different for everyone. One person suggested developing a business plan. I actually don't think that's necessary. Most people don't even follow their business plan, but if it helps you, go ahead and do it. You definitely don't need it to launch. Another person said, don't overthink it. But this is my favorite. This is from Leslie. She said, say yes when someone asks you to provide a service, basically. That is the threshold. When you are out there and talking to people, and they're asking for your help, you just say yes. And once you do, you will be launched. So I hope that answers the question. All right, number 4. This is a little story that I wanted to share about a client of mine who is doing outreach, so reaching out to her ideal clients. And she's been doing it for a while. She's very good at it, but sometimes she gets demotivated. And she said, when one of my prospects says, no, thanks, we don't need your help, I feel rejected and don't want to do any more outreach. And this happened actually recently. She had sent the second message in a series of 4. That's part of the Simplest Marketing Plan. We have a 4-step outreach campaign, and she had sent the second message to 13 prospects in her market. And if you're not familiar with the 4-step outreach campaign, the second one basically just forwards the first one and says, in case you missed it, I really want to work with you. And on that day that she sent the second message, and this was the week after the first message, she got two responses that she called rejections. One said, no thanks. And the other said, sorry, we don't have any need. And she was telling me about it. And I thought, well, why do you call those rejections? To me, that is not a rejection. And I suggested that she decide, because this is a decision and a mindset shift one has to make very consciously, she decide not to see it as a rejection first. And here was the argument I made. The fact that they responded at all speaks volumes about her message and says essentially that it was worth the time to respond. I mean, think about how many messages you get that you don't respond to. So the ones that you do respond to, even if it's a no thanks, says something. And one of the things I think it says in her case is that her message was clear, it was sincere, and it was real because she had done her homework. And so it was clearly coming from a real person and it wasn't a mass email message. And so she actually agreed with me and I think was able to shift her mindset. But I think the underlying idea here is to hold everything very lightly and not be too attached to this one or that one and just keep reaching out. And if she wanted to respond to the two that said no thanks, I suggested that she write back something along the lines of, thanks so much for responding. It means a lot to me. Please keep me in mind if anything changes. And then a question, do you want me to keep in touch so you don't forget I exist? Because that's the whole point of content marketing, which usually manifests as an email newsletter, maybe a LinkedIn newsletter. And the whole purpose of it is to stay in touch with people so they don't forget you exist. So you can ask them and they may say yes and they may say no and they may not respond, but we're not going to take any of it personally. We're going to hold it all very lightly. And here is a line from Austin Church, his newsletter that I was reading on Friday, which I really liked. And it's kind of along the same lines. He said, if you were to follow up with warm leads at least 5 times without second guessing the process, you'd win more projects. And that resonates because it's just so easy to second guess the process and then stop. That's what getting demotivated involves, actually, also second guessing the process. So don't second guess and hold things very lightly. Now, here's another question about motivation. It actually wasn't a question. It was just something that came up about getting motivated to regularly send that email newsletter, which is the way you're going to stay in touch with people so that when they are in or near their moment of need, you appear in their inbox. And newsletter magic is the result because they respond and say, oh my God, let's talk. I've been thinking about you. I need your help. So this was another client, one of the designers in the Simplest Marketing program, and she had sent out her very first newsletter, and she was super happy about that, about having accomplished that. And she wrote in our Slack channel on the day that she sent it, I just sent my first newsletter. I had so much anxiety around it. I had to walk away from my computer after I pushed send, but it's done, which is a really good idea. Just walk away, forget about it. And then a week later, she wrote, sharing for motivation. I just got off a call with 2 clients who both said they loved getting my newsletter and seeing the content I've been posting on LinkedIn. They said it made them feel like they had a design friend in their back pocket. This was such terrific feedback, particularly because I'd been so hesitant to start content marketing. Neither of them had responded to my newsletter or had liked a post. So it's nice to know that even without quote unquote proof that folks are seeing my content, they obviously are. So again, I think the idea here is to hold everything very lightly, and we really can't seek motivation from the outside. And if you are waiting for people to respond to your newsletter or to like your posts, then you're going to easily be demotivated because a lot of people, as you can see it, but aren't reacting. They're not taking action on it. But it doesn't mean they haven't seen it and haven't appreciated it and haven't taken it in and it hasn't registered. You just don't know. So don't think you do know. And I think you have to let what you're doing feed the next thing. We really can't focus on likes or clicks or comments. Just have to put something out there and then use what I call the power of forgetting to move on to the next thing. In fact, that's what I do. I'll put a post out there on LinkedIn or I'll put my newsletter out there and then I move on to the next thing. And then when people do react, I'm thrilled, right? When I check my notifications and I see, oh, people are reacting, great. But if I don't go back to it, then I'm just moving on to the next thing. So that's kind of what I mean about letting everything you are doing feed the next thing. One idea feeds the next. It's not necessarily the reactions I'm getting that feed me. That's the shift that I highly recommend. All right. A couple of questions from the office hour session, actually, that I did not get to answer. I thought I would answer them here on the podcast. One was, aside from LinkedIn, I need new names to send my newsletter to. My list gets very few responses. So again, along the same lines, someone hoping that if she had more people on her list, she would get more responses. Not necessarily. To me, it's really not about quantity. You could have just 3 or 5 or 10 people to send your newsletter to. That's not what matters. It's about quality. We want them to be the right people. And with that said, I would say everyone you know should be on your list, whether you know them professionally or personally, because you just never know who is going to have a need or who's going to know someone who has a need and then can forward your newsletter on. But truthfully, the best way to build the list is slowly with high quality people. And the best way to do that is through outreach, right? Reaching out to 10 people a month, 15 people a month, and you do your 4 steps. And the last step is what we call the closing the loop message. And that's where you say, I'm going to stay in touch with my newsletter unless I hear from you otherwise, or you ask permission to add them to your newsletter list so they don't forget you exist. But it's really not about more names in order to get response. The response is gravy. What we want is exposure and to build trust. That's the whole point of the newsletter and content marketing, by the way. All right. And one more question about newsletters. This is from someone who says, I stress over crafting a message that can also translate well to all my LinkedIn people. So I know who this person is, and I happen to know that she has an email newsletter that she sends, which is very focused on the market that she's focused on. And I think what she's saying here is that her LinkedIn network is broader and wider than the people who get her email newsletter. And so she's concerned that it won't be for them. But I actually think it's okay, because the work you want more of is the work you want to be talking about and to the people who can respond to that and who will be interested in that. That's what you need to put out there. I really don't think you can please everyone. And sometimes trying to do so will definitely stress you out. For her, I would simply repurpose the email newsletter to LinkedIn and let it be what it's going to be. And maybe little by little, it will evolve and you will add other things for the broader market, or you'll translate it, or you include a few other examples that are more relevant to other markets. But I wouldn't stress about it, and I wouldn't use it as an obstacle to not do the LinkedIn newsletter. All right. And finally, as promised in my introduction, I just wanted to reference episode number 510, which some people were confused about. And what I did was I basically took one of my outreach club sessions. That's something that comes with the Simplest Marketing program. Everyone comes together to do outreach, and I give a little lesson at the beginning. And so I used that lesson and I fed it to Notebook LM, one of my favorite tools, and it spit out an audio interview, kind of like a podcast. And I uploaded that as the podcast episode with a little bit of an intro, but I didn't want to give too much information because I wanted people to hear it. So I didn't say too much at the beginning. And some people were confused, like, what is this? And where's Ilise? And who are these people? So I apologize if you were one of those people. It was really just to share the new tool that I'm loving and show you how it works. And so that is Notebook LM. I will be using it more and more. I think you should try it. It's really good for people who have a bunch of content. Like me. I am a content machine. All right. So that is my Q&A session. I hope you enjoyed that. I may do it again. And if you have questions you want answered, please feel free to send them to me at ilise@marketing-mentor.com. That's ILISE at marketing- don't forget the hyphen, mentor.com. And if you want my help finding actual clients using AI, then check out my new one-on-one AI client finding coaching calls. Or feel free to sign up for my quick tips also at marketing-mentor.com. Once you're on the site, you'll find lots more resources, including my simplest marketing plan. So enjoy, and I'll see you next time.